Boy, oh boy, I just saw Spider-Man Brand New Day, and I didn't know Marvel had it in them. I had given up on Marvel years ago. I think the last Marvel, other than Spider-Man No Way Home, the only other Marvel movie, it would have been Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the last one I saw. Well, I tried to watch Thunderbolts because everybody said it was good, and I got half an hour in and it was not good, so I gave up on it. I bailed out at half an hour, and I didn't go to the cinema for that because I figured that might happen. But I knew Spider-Man. I had to go to the cinema. I put my faith in. They do right by Spider-Man, even with No Way Home, which was, in retrospect, the story was kind of not all there. But you know, even with that considered, I felt like they did right by Spider-Man, and I could trust them to do right by Spider-Man again. And man, that was one of the best Spider-Man movies. It reminded me a lot of, and I'm not going to do any spoilers here. Is there really anything that could be spoiled? Yeah, I guess. I mean, I'm not gonna go too much into because it's a really good experience. You want to ride with it from beginning to end. And I saw it in the Dolby Cinema, and I would recommend it for Dolby. I would recommend Dolby for anything that you want to be really immersed in, honestly. Like, if you're somebody that suffers from, you know, the modern, like, attention span problem, definitely Dolby is worth it, because it's such an immersive experience. Like, they have the surround, I think it's like 64 speakers, so the directional audio from above, around, behind, and even below, it's really good. And the picture is so much sharper and clearer, and the room is just darker, so it's very immersive, and you can really get into the story. And what I was going to say about how it reminds me of Spider-Man 2 is, and I would say in this aspect, it even feels like as much of a tribute to the greatness of past Spider-Man movies. It feels like as much of a tribute to that as No Way Home was. Because No Way Home was kind of gimmicky. It's like, oh, we got all the actors together, and, you know, we've got the cool fan service lines. It didn't seem like there was a lot of that in Brand New Day. There was a couple. What would I say? I would say, okay, what was the one where, was it I think it must have been the Multiverse of Madness, where they go to other universes and they meet the Fantastic Four in this one universe, and Jim Halpert is Mr. Fantastic, and then they wheel out Charles Xavier, and in those moments, the first time you see it in the cinema, it's like, oh, you know, you're doing the soy face, like, it's the guy, it's the Jim Halpert, it's Professor X, or, you know, moments like, oh, he said the line, he did the thing. There's none of that. And the issue with stuff like that is it has no rewatch value. Like, you're not going to go watch it again and swipe face at the screen again, you know, because you've seen it before, you know what's coming. That kind of gimmick really relies on it being your first time seeing it and being familiar with, you know, these things. Anyway, so I keep on dancing around this subject that I was going to say, how it reminds me of Spider-Man 2. It reminds me of Spider-Man 2 because there's, like, the thing in Spider-Man 2 was that whole subplot. It wasn't really... It was a subplot that was so woven into the main plot that it's hard to separate. But there was that subplot of, you know, Peter's inner turmoil and, you know, struggling with being a loner and, you know, investing too much of himself into Spider-Man and not having anything else going on in his life, and, you know, he can't be a normal guy. And then he starts to have troubles with his powers, and, you know, he can't make webs. Well, there's, and again with no spoilers, there's a very similar thing going on in Brand New Day. A very, very similar storyline of, you know, and you see this from the very, like, I think literally the very first scene is introducing how Peter is got no life outside of Spider-Man, and he's a loner, and, you know, all he does is, you know, fight crime, and you wonder, what does he do for work? Like, it doesn't really even show that. It's like he's just living in this crappy little storage room apartment with his gear. So, you know, I think maybe it would have been too much, but something that I really liked about Spider-Man 2, it was that he felt like a normal guy. You know, he's a pizza delivery driver. You know, he rides a scooter around the city delivering pizza, and then, you know, he goes home at night and he suits up, and then he loses his job, and it's like, these are very real, relatable struggles. And so maybe it would have been too much, but it would have been cool to see something like that. Like, does he work? You know, does he, you know, struggling with, like, a work-life balance, and then also struggling at the same time with the Spider-Man life balance. Would have been interesting, but it, you know, I wouldn't say it detracted from the story that there wasn't that aspect. Yeah, so there are hints of Spider-Man 2 in this. The other big question that you might have is, how much of Marvel do I need to be familiar with? I would say, if you were... There was one thing that I was kind of missing. There were two things that I was kind of missing. There were three things that I was kind of missing. So the one thing is, the relationship between Spider-Man and Frank Castle, and they keep on, you know, referring to some incident in Staten Island where Peter Parker, or where Spider-Man saved the Punisher's life, and, you know, Frank, of course, is like, no, you didn't save my life, kid. You know, that was a, you know, he does that whole deal. And then, here's what I'll say. Hang on, let me not get sidetracked. Not yet. So I wasn't caught up on that, but, you know, you don't really need it. You know, you can kind of just roll with accepting the fact that, oh, Spider-Man and Punisher already know each other. So, cool. Then the second thing that I kind of wasn't caught up on was Black Widow. There's a character, Black Widow, who is introduced to me. I assume that she's been introduced probably a couple movies ago. And she mentions something called the New Avengers. So, but you don't really need to be too familiar with that. It didn't really hurt my experience of the movie that I didn't know about this character, because they kind of all the context that you need is there if you are not already familiar. And then the third thing was, what was the third thing? Oh, this organization called Damage Control, which seems to be like the new SHIELD. I'm not quite sure, but it's basically what they do. It's a government agency that is, they're going around finding all these superpowered people and then, finding things that are dangerous and finding ways to use those dangerous things for good. And, you'll get all the context you need for that if you're not already familiar. There is a good twist. There is one pretty good plot twist that I didn't see coming. It didn't kind of like knock me, it didn't knock my socks off. But it was good. I didn't see it coming. There are some things that you see it coming, but it's okay. It's like, it's not like, you see it coming like as it's about to happen. I would say if you're good at immersing yourself in a movie, or if you go to the Dolby to overcome, the attention span problems, and you get immersed that way, and you sort of just let the movie happen and don't think about it too much, then you will be very, very pleasantly surprised by how good this movie is. The pacing, there really wasn't any problem with pacing. As a matter of fact, here was my issue with here's an issue that I've had with Marvel movies in the past, is that the pacing, it feels, or here's the big one, Age of Ultron. And now looking back, Age of Ultron was actually really good, but at the time, the rest of Marvel was so good that Age of Ultron was kind of crapped on. But in comparison to how bad Marvel got later, Age of Ultron's actually really good. It's kind of weird how that works. Anyway, the issue with Age of Ultron was the pacing, where it felt like so much was happening, like they were cramming so many events into a 2-hour movie that you just felt rushed. Whereas in Spider-Man, it doesn't feel like that at all. Somehow they managed to compress what could be like a really long, it could be like a whole season of a show, like a series. It could be a whole season, and somehow they managed to fit it all into just over 2 hours, and it is really, really well done. It doesn't feel rushed. Nothing ever really drags, I don't think. But I kept on, like, so much had happened that I kept on thinking, like, oh, are they gonna have time to wrap up this other loose end? Oh, they're wrapping that one up. Are they gonna have time for this one? That kind of deal is where I was in my mind. I was trying not to think too much because, like I said, I really like to immerse myself in a good movie. But those thoughts were creeping in, like, oh, like, are they gonna have time? Am I gonna have to? Are they gonna leave me with the cliffhanger? No, they didn't leave me with the cliffhanger at all. Like, and maybe that's a bit of a spoiler. Sorry. Actually, no, I don't know. It was really, really good. They really, so, what was I saying? So how much do you need to be familiar with? I would say you need to be familiar with what happened to Hulk after Endgame. You need to be familiar with... Actually, not necessarily. No, I think even if you didn't know about Hulk, like, you would kind of get all the context that you need. This was my complaint of Thunderbolts, was that I didn't know who any of the characters were. So I didn't care about any of them because they didn't explain any of it in the first half hour. And they were all so cartoonishly stupid characters. Like the guy that's supposed to be like I think he's supposed to be like a Captain America kind of guy. And he's supposed to be like this rough and tough, no nonsense kind of guy, but he's just an asshole, and like cartoonishly so, like violently angry and just mean to everybody at all times. Like it didn't make any sense to me. I'm like, what is this character, and why am I supposed to care about him? Why am I supposed to care about any of these guys? And if they can't convince me in half an hour, then it's not worth it. But Spider-Man Brand New Day, I think if you have only seen the Spider-Man movies, you'll be set. I think that would be enough. But it would be good. It would be probably much better to have some familiarity with, the Avengers and all that. But anyway. What else? What else do I want to say? The emotional plot was handled really well. Like, Marvel, I didn't know Marvel had it in them to handle a really heavy emotional plot that well anymore. I didn't know they could still do it. One issue that you might have, if you're a big fan of Punisher, like if you saw Netflix Punisher and you're expecting that, you're not going to get that kind of Punisher. They do make him a little goofy, and there is one kind of cheesy moment, like where they do the Marvel, quippy one-liner thing, where it's like in the middle of a heavy moment, and then the character goes, blah, 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 blah. And it's, the audience is supposed to laugh, and they didn't. There was no point at this movie that I laughed. There were funny moments where I kind of shifted in my chair and smiled, but there wasn't like the in-your-face Marvel quip kind of deal that people have criticized so much, that really drags and draws away from the experience, and it takes you out of the moment. There was just one of those, and it was with Punisher, and it wasn't so bad, because like I said, it was just the 1 time. But if you if you are expecting a gritty, dark Punisher, he is a little bit more of a comical, goofy character. I wouldn't say they turned him into a straight up joke. Like, he does still have his kind of rough, raw, say it like it is attitude, you know, that kind of deal. And I think that Marvel opening up to having characters curse so much maybe lends itself to that. Maybe it helps out with that a little bit. I don't think that they are ever overdoing it, actually. Like with Punisher, he cusses a lot, but it doesn't feel like he's like overdoing it, because it's like, oh yeah, I'm the tough guy character, you know, I say god damn, and I say, you know, shit. It's really, it feels in character for him, especially if you're familiar with him. And then there is another character who says god damn at one point, but it fits the tone of the scene. Really fits the tone of the scene, and it's a really dark moment. Like, that plot in this that plot was surprisingly dark for a Spider-Man movie, but it is still Spider-Man, and it's fun, and it's got, you know, the good comic book kind of feel. You know, it's not too heavy. I don't think it's too heavy. Yeah, I don't think it's ever too heavy. It has a really good story of growth, like personal growth and change, with the Spider-Man 2 sort of plot that I was referencing earlier. Pardon me. Yeah. Some familiarity with X-Men might help. Then again, maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe it would be better not to know exactly who that character is in the comics, and if you don't already know the name. Is there anything else I want to say? No, it was a really good movie, man. It was shockingly good, because like I said, I had given up on Marvel so long ago, and I'm really glad that I saw Spider-Man Brand New Day, and I will probably be buying it on DVD when it comes out. Do they still make DVDs? They better make DVDs. Oh god, they better make DVDs. Anyway, I suppose that's all I got. And go see Spider-Man Brand New Day while it's still in the cinema. It's worth it. If this is the one movie that you see this year, I mean, this is the one movie that I probably won't see any other movies this year, except for I might go see Avengers Doomsday. The preview looked pretty good, and like I said, this has given me hope for Marvel, that it's not all slop, superhero slop. And I've kind of gotten over my superhero fatigue, because there's just so much of it, and I stayed away. I stayed away for a long time. I think I'll go see Doomsday. Maybe not, but I'm glad I saw Brand New Day, and you should definitely check it out. you'll have a great time. Anyway. Yep, that's all I got. God bless.